All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for joining. This is an exciting TUG since it's a collaboration of the whole Virginia, Maryland, DC area. I'm Brittany Fong. I am the organizer of the DC Tableau user group, and I've been running it for about 4 years. And I'm going to have everybody else go around and just do a quick introduction. Does Baltimore TUG want to start?
Sure. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Those of you who have been to our meetings before will find my face familiar. Nice to see you all digitally. My name is Andrea. I've been leading the Baltimore TUG for 3 years now. I live in LA now, so I actually have Prim joining as well, who will be our co-leader moving forward to help. So I'll have him introduce himself.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Brittany. Hello, everyone. Glad to be a part of this user group meeting. And yeah, I'm looking forward to co-lead the Baltimore user group with Andrea. Folks in the Baltimore user group might have seen me. I work for Blend 360. I'm heading the business intelligence practice there. And I've been using Tableau and been familiar with Tableau for 6-7 years. So yeah. I'll pass it on to a few more people. I mean, I have Sherry and Viraj, who are also from Baltimore user group, so I'll let them quickly introduce themselves.
Sure, I will go first. I'm Sherry, and for today's session, I'll be hosting the whole game process. And I'm also from Blend 360, work as a senior BI analyst.
Hello, everyone. This is Viraj. I'm from Blend 360. Sorry, I'm Viraj from Blend 360. Today, I'll be talking on the Tableau API and their use cases. And yeah, that's about me.
Great. Brian?
Hey, good evening. This is Brian Liverman with the Nova TUG group. We just started up our Tableau user group back February. I think it was our first meeting, and then we had our second one in April, our first virtual meeting. So I guess technically this makes our second virtual meeting now. So I appreciate the DC TUG and Baltimore TUG for including us. I am a supply chain analyst for Volkswagen Group of America. And I do a lot of reporting and analysis for the logistics group for Volkswagen and Audi. So I use Tableau for that and have been using it about 2 years now, and had the idea of trying to start up a group just in the suburbs, if you will, for Northern Virginia folks. And Brittany was very nice to give me some help and assistance on that, so I very much appreciate that. Also have Sebastian here from Audi, who's one of our co-leaders.
Good afternoon, this is Sebastian, with Brian leading the Nova TUG, Tableau user group that we just recently established. In my normal role, I'm leading the data strategy for Audi of America, and very passionate about the Tableau user group, building the community, and finding like-minded people that really are driven by data visualization and the core and the essentials of creating insights through data.
Great. All right. So here are our little logos. I wanted our faces to at least be on for our introductions, but here are our hashtags. You can also find us on the community pages, which I think Andrea is going to go over in a little bit. All right, so our agenda for today, we just did the welcome and introductions. Next, we're going to be doing a game, which is going to be exciting. Then we're going to do a little bit of what's new with Tableau. And then we have our 3 presenters that will be coming on. So I'm going to hand it over and we're going to start the game.
All right. Let's quickly do the screen sharing. You can get going. Okay.
You see?
Yep. All right, we are going to have a quick game. It's going to be fun. I'm sure you guys will like it. I saw a lot of folks have dialed in their phone. So if you're either on laptop or using your cell phone, you can either go to a browser on your laptop or cell phone. Just go to this website, menti, menti.com, and you can use this code. Before we get going on the game, it's not, the questions are pretty easy, I would say. Like it covers both easy as well as certain intermediate and little bit of advanced questions. And it's not just about Tableau desktop. We are touching on Tableau prep, Tableau API, and so on. So, and a few basic things about Tableau, like history about Tableau as well. So just to get familiarized, the first two questions are going to be practice questions so that you know the drill and get used to it. And then we will go on and have 12 question game here. You have 25 seconds to read and answer. It's multi-choice. You pick one of the choices as the right answer. But here is the trick. We have Tableau swags to give away for the top 3 winners. And the top 3 is going to be based on fastest fingers, meaning if you're quick at responding, your response time is going to be captured, and based on that, the winner will be announced. So don't take 25 seconds. If you know the answer, go and answer it pretty quickly. Yep, I think that's it. So with that, we can move on. Why don't we start with the practice question?
Okay, you will see your game result at the end. So make sure if you're top 3, make sure you take the screenshot and send in the Zoom chat so we will know how to reach out to you. And yeah, I already see so many people like the game. So for those of you who don't know how to join, make sure you visit menti.com and use the code listed here. You can use your phone, pad, or laptop, either is fine. All right, we I'll wait for another minute and to join.
We have 36 participants. That's good.
Is anyone still joining?
I think we can get started. Sure.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna start the game. Please look at whatever devices you're using to join the game. And we will do 2 practice game at the beginning. Oh, wow. Apparently we have most of the player from DC. Hope you get the drill of how to answer the question, and we will try one more practice question, and then we will enter the main question that actually you will collect points from each of them. Oh, we have a lot of advanced people here. Okay, so for the next, starting from next question, you will make sure select the correct answer and also make sure you can select it as fast as you can, because fastest can get higher scores. Okay, let's start it. Okay, so Tableau was founded in January 2003 in California, and currently its headquarters is in Seattle. So we have most of the people get the answer correct. Let's see who's on the top. All right, everybody get ready for the next one. So yeah, the acquisition itself took place last year. So August 1st is when Salesforce complete acquisition. All right, let's get ready for next question. I think my internet is a bit slow for today. Let me see if I can reload it. Okay, so this will be the third question. Yep, so 2020.2 is currently the latest version. It was released last month, May 6th. Let's check out the leaderboard. All right, let's get ready for the next question. So set control, dynamic parameter, and buffer calculation, these are actually pretty newly released features. Tableau catalog is also new, but it's a feature released in late 2019. It's a part of the Tableau Data Manage add-on that's available on Tableau server and online. Basically provide you a more detailed and complete view of how's your data source look like on your server and how they link to each other. Yep, so the correct answer is Tableau Catalog, which is released in 2019 instead of 2020. All right, next one.
I'm really glad that we moved away from date-related questions because I barely know what month it is right now.
Didn't we stop doing months anyway? We're not keeping track of the calendar anymore.
2020 has been the longest 5 years of my life.
Yep, so we're talking about the latest version. You get to set up to 6 dashboard actions. So you get to see it from the screenshot. All right, let's check out the leaderboard. Okay, let's get ready for the next one.
This is my favorite.
Yeah.
Are you there, Sherry? Did we lose her?
My screen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let me know if you can hear me. The image loading, but I guess it takes a while. So character number is a string function in Tableau I really like. So it returns the character encoded by this code number called ASCII. So you can tell from the image that when you type in different numbers, there's different result based on this ASCII code number. And character 10 is probably the most frequently used function among all because it actually gives you a line feed. And I include a pretty nice use case. So usually I use this function to do some cleaning and formatting for the labels. So a quick example is here. You have a visualization where you are not feeding any like line break in the label. And you can see the label under the dot, they're kind of overlapping with each other. But if you want to format it better, what you can do is add a character 10 to line, which makes it much cleaner, commonly used use case for this character 10 function. So the correct answer is adding a line break. All right, we're halfway down. Let's check the next question. So the correct answer is grouped by regular expression. It is not a default functionality in Tableau Prep. So as you can see here, there are 4 major ways you can group value by default in Tableau Prep. I personally find these are pretty powerful, especially pronunciation and common characters. But regular expression is not a default method. You can still do it by using regular expression function or using any imported script. But yeah, it's not a default setting. Right. All right, let's move on to the next one.
I think this is an easy one. Let's see.
Yep, so according to Google, there's 20K member attend Tableau conference last year. Yep, so the correct answer is 220,000. Right, next question. So the way you identify whether it's primary or secondary data source is by looking at the check icon. So usually if it's an icon with a blue check mark, it's the primary data source, and the orange means it's a secondary data source. So for this question, the correct answer is sheet 2 because it's with a blue check mark next to the icon. All right, next question. So here is a order of operation hierarchy for reference. So usually extract filters are at the top, followed by data source filters. And you have it all the way down to table calculations, which is like at the lowest level of Tableau's order of operations. So for this question, the correct answer is extract filter. next one. So export is actually, I believe it's a fairly new feature in Tableau. Recently they add this export button that allows you to just drag a button on your dashboard and allows your audience to download this dashboard in image, PDF, or PowerPoint. So it's something fairly new. And you currently cannot just export your dashboard to Excel. So Excel is the wrong answer. I mean, correct answer for this question. All right, I believe next one is the final question. So I know we will have two presentation that's related to API. So I'm sure you will learn more about API in today's session. But the correct answer for this question is webhook APIs, which it's a part of Tableau Server and online, and also enables you to send an email to people not only within your network, but also you can do it outside of your organizational network. So it's a pretty powerful API. And Viraj from Blend, he will actually present the topic that's closely related to this API later. All right, let's check out the final score in the leaderboard. All right.
All right, looks like it's Rosie, Ryan, and Ryan. Wow, congrats, guys.
Congratulations. Make sure you take the screenshot of on your devices and you can send it to the group.
Yeah, just send it to all panelists on the the chat window. And if you can send your email ID, that will be great as well. But just a coincidence, I was looking at the attendees list and Rosie, Ryan, and Ryan are next to each other, literally like same order.
All start with R.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's alphabetically ordered and it's like really to each other. Wow. Okay, congrats guys again. Hope you enjoyed it. As I said, hope it covered multiple topics and different levels of experience. Yep, and learn something new as part of this activity. Thank you guys.
Really quickly, I don't think that you can post pictures. Do you want me to just put my email in there? They can email it to me and then I'll get their address so I can send the swag.
Sure.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna, next is gonna be what's new at Tableau. So that's gonna be Andrea. I'll let her go ahead and share.
Thanks, Brittany. Let me do, let's see, we need screen number 2. Share. Slideshow. All right. Can someone confirm for me once you can see?
Yep.
Okay, great. So hello again, everyone. Thanks for coming or joining for our live Tableau user group virtual meeting. I hope you enjoyed our game. That's our first time doing a virtual game. So I'm sure if we were all in the room together, it would have been a lot more, at least, you know me, it would have been a lot more talking, but it was fun to play with you all online. Thanks also for coming together during this unique time. We had a RSVP list of, I think, just over 200 people. So clearly, you know, we all miss each other. We're all looking forward to this opportunity for community. And we were really happy to get this ironed out between all of our user group leaders and scheduled so that you all could join us for this meeting. So thanks for your patience also while we navigated scheduling a virtual meeting and all of, you know, what that entails. Special thanks also to Tableau. We had Alyssa, I don't know if she dropped off the call or not, set this Zoom meeting up for us and kind of taught us how to use everything since this is uncharted territory. So I wanted to give our support team there a shout out as well. Since this is our first virtual joint meeting and there might be another, certainly reach out after the meeting with any feedback, or we always love any ideas for topics of interest. And of course, I'm sure everyone will touch on this as well. If you have anything you'd like to present or any way that you would like to offer to volunteer and help with any of the 3 user groups, please reach out. We'd be happy to have you help. And I believe Brittany's going to touch on the details for that a little bit later. I wanted to do a brief intro on myself for those of you who have not been to a Baltimore user group meeting before. So I work for R2 Integrated, which is located right downtown in the heart of Baltimore. I'm a senior marketing analyst there, and I've been working in Tableau for about, I want to say 6 years now. I have pretty limited exposure to Tableau because of how my organization uses it. We're very structured, so I don't get to do anything super creative. And that's part of why I love working with the group, meeting you all, sharing ideas, and getting to just explore and learn new things. So thank you again to all of you for being here, and thank you to the other user group leaders for allowing us to all come together and do this cohesive group meeting. This is our agenda for today based on the Splash invitation that I think you all RSVP'd with. I'll be discussing some just general updates with Tableau, and then I'll pass it along to Brittany to run through some highlights from the latest release and talk about some of her favorite features there. One other thing I wanted to say as we get into more of like the meat and potatoes of our presentations is that we're going to do our best to address any Q&A, but it will be easier if you all can use the Q&A feature instead of the chat feature down below, so that we can keep an eye on that and answer your questions as time allows. All right, so into our information. I typically like to go over what's coming up in the world of Tableau. So for 2020, these are the events that they've really highlighted for us. First, I'll start by just confirming for anyone who wasn't already sure, but TC20 is not happening for this year, at least definitely not in person. They're working on reimagining it for us. I know that a number of us attend annually, so we're definitely sadly missing out on that opportunity. Although personally, I'm not missing out on the 1,000 steps that I typically have to take to get around whatever giant venue to race to my next session. A new kind of opportunity that Tableau has introduced to us is this Data Fam Community Jam virtual kind of meeting. So it's based on the Tableau Fringe Festival that's been running virtual conferences for years. Tableau just used their experience with that and a lot of the feedback from us, from Tableau user group leaders, to bring a weekly series of virtual events while we're practicing social distancing. They're about weekly, so if you don't see one, just check back for the next week, because I guess nothing's guaranteed these days. They're usually about 2 full hours during the session of speakers covering everything, about Tableau and data visualization. So feel free to check those out if our Tableau user group meetings are not sufficiently quenching your thirst for data viz information. Also coming up is the Virtual IT Summit. This is focused or designed for IT leaders. There are about 20 sessions total. The first handful of those are scheduled sessions with a specific timeline. And then after that, the rest are breakout sessions. So you get to kind of choose your own adventure after those first couple of sessions. It addresses everything from analytics best practices regarding data access, reviews governance, and how to help drive your organizations forward from an IT perspective. Tableau is also offering a Tableau on Tableau webinar. They feature about 7 speakers from Tableau for about 1 hour's worth of on-demand information, meaning you can go and watch these webinars at any time. And this one in particular that they've titled How We're Using Our Products addresses how or highlights some of the ways in which they're using Tableau to support their business and how you could possibly do the same in light of COVID-19. Beyond those main highlights, we also have the June live webinars. So whereas the How We're Using Our Products on the right here is on demand, the live webinars are live, which means Q&A is also live. I highlighted what's available for the rest of the month here, and at the bottom of the screen is the link for where you can find all of these events that I just mentioned. There's, of course, filters on the side for region and type of event as well. So that covers all the events we have coming up. I have another kind of exciting announcement. So Tableau community forums are moving to a new platform. Yay! There are a number of benefits associated with moving to that new platform. They've outlined a couple here. I took this screenshot actually from one of their forums where an employee had posted for us. It includes automated suggestions, giving out kind of personal badges to kind of gamify the experience. It's much more optimized for mobile as opposed to the past. And the search features will return results from other properties outside of just the forum, including things like the knowledge base, which I know we all rely on that a lot. The good news is that you will be using the same credentials and you'll be able to bookmark resources to your profile. They're planning on migrating all of the content that's currently there, so don't be alarmed if there's anything that you rely on heavily, but do keep in mind that some of the URLs might change. So if you can't find something you're looking for before, try the new search feature. This will be coming out late spring. Even once it's rolled out, they're going to continue to introduce new features once they've made the switch. Also, in case you're wondering why they're switching to a new platform, their existing platform is actually being sunset from what I understood. So it's kind of a forced move, but obviously we're seeing some big advantages from it. Speaking of community resources, for those of you who aren't already staying connected to your user groups, I provided here the user group pages for the 3 that have combined for today's virtual meeting. These pages can be used to share or post presentation decks from meetings. You can ask questions to your fellow users in the area. And also if you have a special interest group that you're trying to set up, you can kind of find interest there. And as I mentioned, these pages will all be migrated once we move to the new platform. So don't feel like using them now would be a waste of your time. Okay, that's all in terms of staying connected and the community there. This is just a reminder for those of you who aren't familiar with how you can get technical support for Tableau, that if you go to the websites listed here, you can either submit a case to get help, or you can search, as I mentioned, through the knowledge base for answers that way. Technical support is included with your perpetual license. So if you just bought your license recently, technical support is included for 1 year. If you have not bought it within the last year and you have also not renewed your maintenance, then you will not qualify for the technical support program at the higher levels. There are 3 levels now. I don't think there used to be 3 levels. Now there's the standard, extended, and premium support. If you don't have the ongoing support through the maintenance renewal, you can, or you still have complimentary access to some of the resources like I mentioned before, the knowledge base. You can access the on-demand training videos, the live training, all the Tableau community pages, including the ones I just mentioned, and any product documentation. If you're not sure if you have maintenance included or if you have more questions about the support levels, you can go to the second link I provided here, and they have a really nice chart laid out with the support levels and all the features that are included with each. You can talk to your account manager at Tableau if you need to renew your license, maintenance, or if you want to upgrade your support level. I think I have one more slide, but I just want to pause now in case there was any Q&A because I don't have it on my screen. Can one of the other user group leaders let me know if we've had any questions pop up yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, perfect. Yep, so this will be my last slide and then I'll pass it over to Brittany. So I just like to let everyone know if there are any huge known issues so we can all be on the same page that we're not going crazy when something seems to be broken. There's nothing that I saw the last couple of days to call out in particular, but I did want to provide the 3 links that I check on a regular basis. Usually I check every Friday, unless there is something in particular that I think is wrong. So the known issues page will tell you everything that they're aware of that is a bug. So if you are going crazy trying to get something to work and it's not, this is nice to keep you sane and confirm that what you've identified is in fact a known issue. These can be very, very specific. So you definitely have to dig a little bit to find your issue sometimes. But they're so specific because that's why the bugs are so hard to find. The online status allows you to subscribe to updates and tells you things like if there's an inability to log on. There's, again, a whole list of issues. They're usually more minor, but they're also color-coded for severity. And this just applies to Tableau Online. The known issues that I just mentioned previously usually has a lot more to do with Tableau Desktop, Tableau Server. And then release notes is not necessarily about current issues, but it's more about the issues that we've fixed. So I check those on a regular basis to see just where everything stands and if anything has been updated in a recent release that I want to make sure that I download because it was affecting my workbooks. As I mentioned, I have a very specific window that I work in, so it doesn't normally apply to me, but for those of you who have a little bit more creative license, this might be really helpful. If there still aren't any questions for me, then I'm happy to pass it along to Brittany for the highlights on the latest feature release.
Great. The main questions were just, can you share these links? So can you put them in the chat?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll do that next.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so I'm going to be going over some of the new features in Tableau. These are definitely not all of them. I mean, if you go to the website, you can see, the huge list, but these are just some of the ones that I highlighted that I thought might be most important. I may be a little biased depending on, I do a lot of development, so there's probably not as much server stuff on here. So the latest 2 releases were 2020.2, which happened May 6th, and then 2020.1 back in February. So the biggest thing in Tableau 2020.2 is the data relationships. I've already tested it out and I think that it's fantastic. It's good for one-to-many relationships where when you were joining, you would get duplication and then you'd have to create a level of detail calculation to account for that. So they call them data noodles or data relationships, and you can create those in your data connection window to make things a lot simpler and not have to deal with those level of detail calcs. They also added set controls. So if you've utilized the set functionality or feature before, it was always a feature that only the developers could change what was in the set. They've added options now so that people who are viewing the dashboard can now control what values they want to be part of the set. There's also an Esri web data connector. There's new Tableau server admin views. I actually haven't seen them, but I know that the old ones definitely needed an overhaul. And then you can also explore visualizations in the browser for Tableau Public now. So that was always a Tableau server thing, but it's now been added to public. For Tableau 2020.1, there is dynamic parameters. So it's not quite as dynamic as I think some of us want yet, but at least you can now set default parameter values so that when your users open their workbook, it's going to default to today, or you can default it to the last value, something like that. There's also viz animations, which are fun. I played with them a little bit today. Those are going to be at the workbook level. There's a buffer calculation, which is going to be used to calculate.
Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I'm not, am I? All right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. So I've just been walking through these. There's really nothing that you've missed. So viz animations, the buffer calculation, which is going to be used to calculate distances around a point. There were enhancements to exporting dashboards. You can also use the pages feature in the browser now. So that's like when you hit play and it kind of plays through the filters. It's been seen a lot in Iron Viz if you've ever watched Iron Viz live or virtually. And then dashboard extensions are now available in Tableau Public. So if you're looking for new features, you can go to this website. They always update it with whatever is the latest version. And you can also, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it'll give you features. You can go back to some of the previous versions. All right. I don't believe there are any questions. So with that, I'm going to be handing it over once I get out of this. All right. I'm going to be handing it over to Mark and Camden from Crow Insights. Crow Insight is, I guess, quote unquote, headquartered in DC, but I don't actually think that you guys are from the DC area, but you can let us know. So they're going to talk a little bit about APIs and JavaScript.
All right. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Camden Blatchley. I'm a software developer for Crow Insight. And like Brittany said, Crow Insight is based in Tacoma Park, Maryland, but we are remote even prior to coronavirus. So I'm actually based up in northern New Hampshire, so not quite local. And I'm joined by my colleague, Mark Russell, who's a Tableau developer. And he did a lot of the work on the project that we're going to be discussing today, and he'll provide some helpful insights. So yeah, essentially we just completed a project for the De Beaumont Foundation, which is a public health nonprofit based in the DC area. And in creating that project, we employed the Tableau JavaScript API several times in order to add some customization and functionality, which we thought was really cool, and wanted to share with you some of the ways we did that, just quick, simple examples that maybe will inspire you to use the API in some of your upcoming projects. So some background on the project. The data is from the Public Health Workforce Interest and Needs Survey, also known as PHWINS. It's a survey organized by the de Beaumont Foundation and also the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. And it's used by public health agencies to understand their workforce needs. And so for the de Beaumont Foundation, we created a data story with several interactive dashboards to allow agencies to explore the data, but also to appeal to a more general audience. So I'll just head over to the project here on de Beaumont's website. So as I describe some of the unique little features that we created with the API, you'll have a better understanding. So it's embedded on their website. It's a format that starts off with some sort of static overview of the survey and high-level takeaways about demographics. And then it moves into a variety of interactive dashboards that allow users to slice by several demographic categories such as race, gender, and et cetera, and go through different survey questions about the workforce. All right, so why use the JavaScript API for this project? I think there's a couple of reasons why it turned out to be really helpful. The first being that our client really wanted a custom field that matched their branding guidelines and also provided some additional functionality. And the API was really helpful in providing a little bit more control over controls and layout and design. And then also a secondary helpful use of the API was that we were actually able to improve some of the Tableau public performance involved with this project by using the API. All right, so with that said, I'm gonna launch into 7 examples, 7 quick, simple examples of how we use the API in this project in action. And yeah, let's begin. All right, so the first really simple use of the API were custom navigation tiles that we created for the application. As you can see, let me hop over there. See on their website, we kind of wrapped the dashboard in a little HTML wrapper, which they embedded as an iframe, and created some custom navigation tiles. Our client, the Beaumont Foundation, wanted to provide a way for users to skip through, if they're a repeat user, to the interactive dashboards without having to click through the intro sequence. And they also wanted a little bit more control over the customization than just showing all of the tabs in a workbook. So with, given those requirements, we decided to create some simple HTML buttons that provided background images that provided more of a visual cue to allow users to skip ahead to different parts. And where the API comes in here is just one of the, I think, most basic functions, but also helpful in the JavaScript API, which allows you to switch between different dashboards in a workbook. Hey, Mark, do you have anything to add on this one?
Mark, you're on mute.
I think you're on mute, Mark.
Sorry about that. Nothing really to add except to say I thought we were going to call it the Magnificent Seven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to find a kind of like a life hacker alliteration title to name the 7, but it was tricky. I couldn't find 10 tremendous tricks in Tableau. I only had 7. So we were working with a less exciting title. All right. So another quick example of the API in action was with some nested drop-down menus that we created. You can see here the survey, and specifically in this interactive dashboard, is all broken down into a variety of demographic categories. And our client wanted to organize this in a really more coherent way and to keep that categorization. And the Tableau sort of parameter dropdown didn't provide that same level of customization to have a true nested dropdown to allow users to explore the different categories. So to that end, we created another HTML dropdown with these different categories, and then linked it up to the API so that a user can filter on one of these categories. we thought that this was a really nice way to add a little bit more customization to the dashboard. We simply overlaid it into the embed. Another helpful note about Tableau parameters and drop-down menus is that some Tableau features aren't in compliance with the 508 regulation, which is a federal regulation that mandates certain user accessibility features. So for instance, for users who might be using a screen reader or other, or tabs or things like that, there are certain features in Tableau that aren't accessible to them. And so if you wanted to have a perfectly 508 compliant dashboard, Tableau parameter dropdowns are actually not 508 compliant. So in that instance, you would probably use a dropdown similar to this, where you'd embed your dashboard and then have a custom HTML dropdown to navigate. And this is using another API function, which is the change parameter function. And then it also has an event listener to block out the dropdown once it's done, so that it's inaccessible. So just only two functions, and you have a nice custom dropdown that you can use in your dashboard. All right. So in a similar vein, our client also wanted a little bit more control over how the outputs and how this application was shared. So they wanted to have sort of custom presentation ready images that were different than the default Tableau download option. So to provide these custom images as an option, we built upon the Tableau toolbar to create our own download image button. They also gave us some feedback that when they shared it internally, a lot of users who weren't as familiar with Tableau felt like the download button was hard to find. So we made it a little bit more obvious. And then also, instead of linking to the default Tableau, of which there is an API function, we have our own custom download that downloads direct, and then is a more high-res photo than the Tableau default. So that's another helpful way. I think something else you can do if you wanted to use the API more thoroughly, if you had a custom download, is that there are specific functions for the different options. So you could have it launch immediately into a PowerPoint or JPEG or PNG. Like, you can specify more specifically what the file type is that you want the download to be. It just gives you some more control if your client or your organization is concerned about how you share your different Tableau and application products. Mark, anything you want to add there?
No, except, anybody who's, going back to those parameters, anybody who's, had to deal with a parameter or a filter that runs, 50 different things, being able to create a hierarchy like that is really, really useful. It's fantastic.
Cool. All right, so on to number 4 of the 7 examples. The next up is this progress indicator that we created. So this is similar to the download image button. This is a small progress indicator down here. Our client wanted us to provide a way for users to know their location as they progress throughout the data story. And we wanted to do it in a way that was subtle, didn't take up a lot of space. And so once again, we turned to JavaScript and HTML. This progress indicator was actually made using a little bit of D3 code to overlay the circles onto the Tableau bar and then tag them with the specific dashboard name that they corresponded to. And as you click through, it just updates with the location in the workbook. So another really simple application of the API, but I think once again, it provides a helpful additional customized touch to a user as they use the application. Yeah. All right, Mark, anything on that?
No, except to say that when I see this, when I see the image of the whole thing, the thought comes to mind that this is like Tableau meets the Borg.
Yep. Yeah, it's like Frankenstein Tableau sort of, or if JavaScript and Tableau had a baby. So that's what we're currently working with. Yeah, so then our fifth example is another JavaScript sort of overlay. This is a reference line modal. So in the project, anytime a user filters, reference lines appear. And while I think a lot of people here are really comfortable with the idea of reference lines, some of the feedback we got from our client was that users were a little bit confused about the reference lines. They weren't sure what exactly they were represented. So to solve that, we wanted to create some sort of mechanism that notified users of the reference lines, made sure they read it versus just a note somewhere on the dashboard that might be ignored, and that would only appear once. We didn't want to distract people as they explored the data. So to that end, in JavaScript, we made a simple function that waits for the users to select the first filter. And then once that filter was created, or the first time they filtered and the first time the reference lines appeared, it would appear with this modal pop-up, which highlighted the reference line, then also gave a brief description. So something maybe similar to what you'd see, like if application updates that kind of guides you through. That's what we were shooting for, to have a simple overlay. And we also had a separate one for any sort of stacked bar charts that were to make sure the reference line there, it was a little bit more specific. And as for how this related to the API, we have these notes specific to every dashboard. So we needed to know like a variety of locations of where the reference lines were, which to choose and highlight. And so we used the API to figure out what workbook or what dashboard in the workbook was currently selected, and then locate and position our filter or our modal note. Yeah.
So Camden, they only ever appear once, right? Once for the stack chart, and then once for the other, and then in that session, unless you actually reload, that only comes up to bother you one time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the Development Foundation was really excited about that because they didn't want something that was too obtrusive, but because they had this feedback that people were getting confused, they really wanted to make sure that it was something people noticed and read rather than just an extraneous note. So it was a helpful solution that drew upon JavaScript to meet their need. All right, so the last 5 quick examples were mostly to do with customizing some aspects of the functionality and interface. And then these next 2 are talking more about changes if you're using specifically Tableau Public to increase your performance in your application. So some of the early feedback we got had to do with performance and switching between different tabs in a workbook. Essentially, we had a single embedded workbook, and then every time someone clicked to go to the next dashboard in the workbook, there was a performance lag, since that required a round trip to the server. And so our client wanted quicker performance when switching between dashboards. So the problem was, how do we reduce the amount of server round trips? And so the solution was to, instead of having just a single embedded Tableau workbook, embed multiple and stack them on top of each other in the HTML. So essentially we have, in this scenario, I think 7 Tableau dashboards that are stacked on top of each other like pieces of paper. And instead of having to do a Tableau API call when you switch between different views, they're just being rearranged in the HTML. So it's all happening on the client side and in the browser, and that doesn't require a round trip. So it's a lot snappier than simply having, than using an API call to switch between two tabs. So that's a helpful trick if you're trying to improve, if you have a variety of dashboards and you want to improve the performance when switching between them. Yeah. All right. And then on to the last example of the API in action. So something you might have seen while I was clicking through is that if you're using Tableau Public, occasionally, or more than occasionally, it disconnects and kicks you off and resets your dashboard. And so disconnect from a user interface or experience perspective is not great. If a user had a variety of filters that they were looking at, they lose their filters, and there's some downtime as well. So we wanted our application to always be up. We didn't want it. We were trying to work around this disconnect, and so that it was always uploaded. So at this point, I think in this example, we're heading sort of into the danger zone. This probably isn't Tableau recommended, more of a workaround for if you're using Tableau Public and you don't want to have a constant disconnect. I don't know if this is as much of an issue with Tableau Server where you can specify your disconnect time, but at the same time, Tableau Public is obviously free, so there's a big advantage to trying to find this workaround here. So what we figured out was that a disconnect always kicks the workbook back to the initial dashboard that was loaded. So in the URL, when you're setting it up, you have to specify a dashboard to load to. And so we decided that if we had a designated loading page that we used as our default and then immediately switched to a different tab in the workbook, we'd know that if we ever landed back on the loading page, that Tableau Public has disconnected, that we need to reset the view. And so we created a function in JavaScript that checks every single second if the current workbook or dashboard that's getting viewed is the loading dashboard. And if it is, we've saved the previous state and filter information. And so we just send it right back using the API, switching to the correct dashboard. So you can see it looping here in this little GIF, the example of what's happening. Essentially, you're on it, Tableau kicks you off, and then you're back. So consider that maybe a helpful hack if you have an issue with Tableau Public that you want to work around the disconnect issue. All right, that is all I have. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
We haven't gotten anything in the Q&A yet, but
okay,
give it a second just in case.
I'd just like to say that we work collaboratively on this. I did the Tableau side, and Camden did the JavaScript API stuff, all of that. But it was just a really interesting project because what he's doing is really brilliant, and to see how he was able to really optimize what Tableau is capable of doing. There's really just a fantastic marriage of coding and Tableau. It's a very interesting project.
Awesome. All right. No questions have come through, but I'm going to hand it over to the Northern Virginia guys.
Perfect.
Great.
Getting the presentation ready.
Okay.
Let me know with a little feedback if you can see my screen.
We're seeing you right now.
Okay, perfect. Probably with a very serious face trying to figure this out. Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, let me know if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. The next presentation is brought to you by the Northern Virginia Tableau User Group. We were founded earlier this year, and you can find us on LinkedIn as well. We just recently started our Tableau User Group LinkedIn group, so please feel free, just type into the search Nova Tableau User Group, hashtag NovaTUG. You know, you don't even need to type in the full string. You can just start and you will see it popping up there. So that's the place that we call home, where we're trying to basically keep our community engaged, share news about the next upcoming events, and make sure that everybody knows what's up in the community. I have a few announcements before we go into the actual presentation. The first one, if you remember, if you were actually attending our very first Tableau user group that we held at the Audi and Volkswagen Group of America headquarters in Herndon, we talked about some of the things that I'm very passionate about in my current role. And one of the main objectives for this year is basically to expand our Center of Excellence for Data and Analytics on the Audi brand side. So that's the 4 rings, the beautiful cars that you see on the street, from the A3s to the SUVs, the e-tron, the electric car, and our R8s, the Spider with the 2 doors. And we're currently in the process to basically assemble our Avenger Dream Team with various different roles that were originally announced back in, I believe, February or April, and we're now basically actively hiring. If you finished first or second or third or within the first 10 ranks of that quiz that we saw earlier, please definitely reach out to us. We're definitely interested in you. Overall, you see there's a variety of data-related roles, but of course, I think mostly important and relevant for this group, we're looking for Tableau experts, somebody who is really senior and feels comfortable working with a large group. We're talking actually the entire Audi enterprise, a community internally of about 25 to 35 members that we're trying to really mature over the next coming months and years to adopt Tableau as our standard software for BI reporting, standardization, and sharing of analytics within the team. So if any of those roles that you see here speak to you, please feel free to reach out either through audiusa.com careers or get in touch with myself through LinkedIn. Next, I would like to introduce you to a young gentleman who I'm very proud to, help out here. So first, he basically, caught my attention with some beautiful dashboards that he built and posted regularly on LinkedIn. Since I'm a passionate soccer player, the comparison on Makeover Mondays that he did for Ronaldo and Messi, I know the opinions about those 2 superstars within the soccer world are split, but that was something where I was very interested to see how something from a complete different area can be very directly being translated into an interactive dashboard within Tableau. Most recent one that he created also was with regards to the, let me see actually. Okay, another favorite of my ones. So I got confused for a second because now we have, the Space Force with our, Michael Scott main actor. So the other Tableau dashboard that he's created was with regards to The Office. So that was another beauty to see how statistics of that show translate into a Tableau dashboard, something that I would have never thought before, that's something that is attractive and possible. But long story short, so Dhruv is actually on the search of an internship or a, starting his career, kicking it off within the BI space. So if anyone in the audience currently has or is aware of any role to give a young gentleman a starting ground who's very engaged in the community and is growing stronger and stronger within the Tableau community, please reach out to him through LinkedIn. The information you can see here. And he's a great guy from the interactions that I had, and I would definitely be happy to see him landing a job over the next couple of weeks. Last but not least, we have Britton Gray. Britton is currently with Project Lead the Way. We had a success story over the last couple of years when we really put in the foundation of our BI strategy at Audi of America, and he was essential for us to lay the groundwork to really understand how we basically create the setup that is required to effectively onboard an entire community across the enterprise. So really speaking about things such as what's the right technical setup between Tableau desktop, server, how should we connect to Tableau, what's the best way to get the maximum performance? How do we create standard, templates within Tableau to really make sure that, it represents the brand accordingly within our walls, but also outside of the organization. And he was basically the one that was driving it forward, and I'm very happy to reintroduce him today to share some of his work that he's currently engaged on. Very passionate about the education space that he's currently in. And with that, Britton, I would like to hand over to you, and very excited to see what you have to offer today.
Hey, thank you, Sebastian. Let me make sure I'm sharing my correct screen. Okay, there we go. All right, you're seeing everything correctly, hopefully. So we're going to talk about today effectively getting real-time insights with direct connections. So doing away with extracts. And if I can get, there we go. All right, so it's a little bit about, oh, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I don't see your screen though.
You do, oh. Oh, that's right. Zoom, there's that second, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's that second click you have to do in Zoom. Okay, so here's me. My Twitter handle is iDreamInSQL. That is really a thing. It's a little interesting when you do it, but I'm still here. I am the Director of Business Intelligence at Project Lead the Way. So I'll talk about that in a second, but we're a nonprofit. We develop pre-K through 12 case-based science curricula. So it's very much hands-on, very project-based, very whole, really size of things. So we're talking about ethics, for instance, when we're working in our biomedical curriculum. So it really, our goal is to help prepare kids, specifically in engineering, computer science, and biomedical science, for those sort of careers once they get out of school. We are in more than 12,000 schools nationwide. So I know there are quite a few in the DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia area that we're in. I have been doing data and analytics work for quite a while now. Since 2005, I've really been doing a lot of Tableau since about 2014. There we go. So really, my story here is what I call two organizations, one goal. So in both of my my current life and my immediately previous one, we are driving enthusiastic adoption of data and therefore creating a data-centric culture. So at Audi, as Sebastian talked about, we were really setting up that center of excellence within Audi, getting our champions, so to speak, within the organization set up, getting things into our data lake, getting adoption out, getting that standardized, everything that really is needed to create that sort of a data-centric culture. And I'll have an aside here just for a minute. Sebastian and his team are absolutely wonderful people to work with, very skilled, very, just very pleasant people, and very passionate about what they do. So I know they're hiring there, Audi. I could not recommend working there highly enough. So that'll be my shout out for that. However, I live here in the Indianapolis area, and I was given the opportunity to take the reins of a BI analytics department at an educational nonprofit, and I come from a family of teachers, so I felt the calling there. So I left Audi to join PLTW, and at PLTW, I'm a director of a group of 3, so we're not that large. but we do quite a bit. In fact, one of our core values at PLTW is practice what we teach. And one of the big things that we teach our kids to do is to use data when solving problems. So it's definitely a case of developing that data-driven culture so we can help the next generation develop a data-driven culture. So we're going to talk about a little bit about first, what is real time? True real-time data is effectively data pushing into your data lake or warehouse. Typically it's done via some sort of API call, a stream processor. The big thing is that it's data triggered and it's a push. So it's an active, I guess, stream into your data. The typical availability from when that data becomes available to your data system to when it's available for analysis is seconds. That said, implementing this is pretty expensive, and as far as the amount of time, development effort, maintenance, those sorts of things, when you're talking about that, it's a very big lift. There are some tools in the newest generation of things that make that slightly less onerous, but it's still a big thing to get done. As compared to near real-time data, which when a lot of people talk about real-time, they're actually talking about near real-time. You're still having your data platform pull that data in sort of an ETL, ELT type process, just like your typical nightly batches have done up to that time. It's typically time triggered, and your availability tends to be minutes. 10, 15 minutes is a pretty often used cadence for that, but it's much less expensive to implement because you're using the same paradigms as you are with batch loads. You're just compressing it and making sure that nothing's running over something else. So that said, as a rule of thumb, when trying to figure out whether you need true real time or near real time, is asking the question, what would the business impact be if your data was 15 minutes old? In many cases, the answer is little to none. However, so for instance, if you're on a manufacturing line and trying to monitor, is anything going wrong? It may not be, but that's typically the question that we ask the business to determine whether it's true real time or near real time need. That said, within the Tableau environment, we're really going to look at dealing with those things similarly. So what makes a modern data platform? So the nice thing is with our modern data platforms is this really enables more of a real-time experience in Tableau. And the big thing is that architecture, while it drives technology, technology enables architecture. In a lot of cases, we see where, I guess, people chase after Gartner, for lack of a better term, where they're trying to to drive architecture by technology. You really want your architecture to drive your technology. Technology is an enabler. So modern data platforms tend to be very good at large volume data. They're scalable, so they both scale out and scale up. So the difference between we're going to need a bigger boat and we're going to need more boats. Most modern data platforms can solve both problems there. They will handle batch and streaming data sources pretty well. Typically, you're talking more of an ELT, and you're also talking about multiple use cases simultaneously. So while you may have your analysts using Tableau and your executives just using very curated dashboards, you may have data scientists going against that same data, crunching it much more heavily. There are typically many types of data, so we're not talking as much about tables, rows and columns as semi-structured data, JSON, that sort of thing. And one of the nice things also is that there's built-in information security. So with that whole information platform, you're getting security as a part of that. We're talking SQL, NoSQL, those optimizations. So these are the parts of the technology that really enable those sorts of architectural concerns for a modern data platform. So within Tableau, what's the cost of extraction? So as far as time goes, obviously that's one of the big things. Now, if you're just running things nightly, it's not probably a terrible concern, unless, for instance, you're a global organization and you have users around the world. That becomes a little more problematic potentially, but it's more of a process of scheduling it with and around your ETL process, right? So you don't want your Tableau extracts to kick off before your ETL process stops, because then you're going to get either data that's literally in the midst of being updated and refreshed, or you may even get 2-day-old data at that point if your refreshes happen before your ETL does. And just a good way to look at that, and let me get in here. So for instance, for us, this is our background task. You can see we don't have that many extracts running. Probably takes, and there's that refresh problem. It's not just Tableau Public. There we go. Takes 10, 15 minutes, but we're running a lot of stuff at the same time. That said, extracts cost a lot of resources on the Tableau server itself. There are the backgrounders, the data engines, and I say data engines as compared to the data server. Those are both on the Tableau server. They're two very different things. If you turn off data engines, effectively it turns off extracts. If you were to turn off the data server, you have a useless brick. That's the data server is what actually it really mitigates the connection to all of your data sources. So don't confuse the two. Then you've got file store processes, especially on multi-node environments, in order to keep those extracts consistent between all of your nodes, and then disk and network just on the server. So extracts do place a decent load on the Tableau server. And that's a load. If somehow you take that off, you're probably looking at a more performant server as far as actually doing visualization creation. And then from a database standpoint, finally, when you're saying, rather than a modern data platform, which is designed to give that slice and diced view of the data as the queries go it, instead, this is a stick up, give me all your data now. So while the data platforms definitely can do that, that's not what they're designed to do. And that's causing a lot of network bandwidth and other stress on your disk systems. Not to say that extraction is never a thing you want to use, but know it comes with costs. As far as the complexity of it goes, you just have to start asking questions like, when did my extract refresh versus when did my data refresh? So that was the problem I was talking about earlier, when you could have either a hodgepodge of data or maybe even 2-day-old data if we're talking about daily refreshes. Extracts, by the way, can go as much as once every 15 minutes. But if you do, that's going to be a serious performance problem typically, unless you've got a really good multi-node environment that's designed to deal with that. What if the extract fails? Well, I mean, other than knowing that the extract failed in my dashboard here, like this guy here, it's really difficult, especially if I don't monitor my email as well as I should, that maybe something went wrong. And therefore, I may be dealing with several-day-old data and just maybe not quite realizing it. And then also it's just another place that needs data security rules. Most modern data platforms support dynamic data masking, logging user queries, those sorts of things that while Tableau can do some of that, you're talking about now suddenly having your logs and having your auditing in two separate places. And I can tell you from the process of going through an ISO audit, that's something that auditors definitely like to see. The fewer places you look at in order to do any sort of security audits, typically the happier that they are. Now, you will need to extract though, absolutely, in a few cases. If you're on Tableau Online and you're connecting to an on-premise DB, that said, there is a Tableau effectively sync client, Tableau Online sync client. It can redirect those queries to on-premise DBs in real time, but you're talking a lot of jumps in order to get from one place to another, and I would not recommend it. Typically, if you're using Tableau Online and you need to do something from an on-premise DB, you're still using that sync client, but you're actually just using that sync client to create the export and then push it up to Tableau Online. You'll typically need to extract if you're federating or joining data from multiple sources. That said, my recommendation is, we have data lakes in modern data platforms for a reason. Hold on, let me. Okay, all right. Oop. Let me go back. Or effectively, your data platform is just too slow. Sometimes it's just what you're asking it to do real time is not what it's designed to do. Or if you get the quintessential hacked off call from your DBA, in the case in my organization, I'm the DBA as well. So I guess I just call myself being hacked off. So in order to use the live data, in order to make the most of that data platform that most organizations have probably sunk quite a bit of cost and time into doing. First of all, database storage is cheap. Especially if you're using a cloud platform. We use Snowflake, so I believe we pay, for something that we totally do not even manage. Snowflake's cost is $23 per terabyte per month. So storage is stupid cheap. Go ahead and use it when you can. So I like to materialize end user data if feasible. Effectively, yes, that's the database version of doing extracts, except you're not going between servers, you're not using bandwidth, you're using a database for what a database is designed to do. Once those end user data sets are materialized, they're super, super fast, especially within a Tableau environment, and you're going to get typically really performant data unless you're talking, hundreds of millions or billions of rows. I like to put any security views on top of those data sets. Again, we're talking about security, data security all in one place. So if I only have access to the South region's data, that is coded in to the data set in the database. So whether I'm accessing it from Tableau or potentially even from somewhere else, that view that's surfaced to me, no matter what, I only have that. And then we're not looking in different places if for some reason either I see something that I'm not supposed to, or I've got conflicting rules that cause me to see nothing. Again, as we talked about using database security, so that one place, my giant recommendation there is going to be, if you can, use the same identity provider for both Tableau and your database. So that's seamless to your end user. They're not having to remember different sets of usernames and passwords. You don't have to embed credentials, which is inherently a little unsafe from a data perspective. And then if you have any column or row level security concerns, your views, effectively, you can either mask either in views or most database platforms that I was talking about have dynamic data masking as well. So you can handle all this within a well-structured database view. Again, so you avoid that accidental data access, and that's auditable all in one place. So if you need to figure out, say for instance, for a PI type thing, if you need to figure out who accessed rows about Joe Smith, most good database logging is going to be able to tell you those sorts of things, because we know, as much as we typically try to avoid people actually exporting result sets down to Excel and then doing what they want with them, it happens. And so if you need to trace that potential access, it's much easier to do if it's done in one place. However, if we are using a direct connection, we have to beware of caching. So the best way I can probably explain this would be to tell a story. My son loves apples. So we're always buying apples. He's always eating apples. So we've bought a few apples. My son has eaten them. So he'll come to me and go, Daddy, do we have any apples? Well, I happen to know that he ate the last one yesterday. So I've done my query to the apples. I found we have no apples. So do I need to necessarily go downstairs back to the refrigerator, check for apples to see, do we have any apples? Probably not. Most modern database platforms have a cache that effectively does the same thing. I don't have to go through my entire data set again to say, do we have any apples? I just remember that we don't have apples. Now, Tableau also has a cache, and typically Tableau will prefer to go to its cache for that same question. As a fallback, it'll go to the database, but if it goes to the database, that database then populates the cache. So at that point, according to the database cache, we have no apples. According to the Tableau cache, we have no apples. Then Tableau, anytime you ask if we have apples, Tableau will say no. However, in our story, imagine my wife knows that we have no apples, and coming home from work one day, she decides to go get apples at the grocery store. It's newly arriving data. So now we have apples. However, if I'm Tableau, my son comes to me, he goes, do we have apples? I'm going to go to my cache, and as I remember it, we don't have any apples. So I'm going to say no. Is that the correct answer now? No, it's not. We do have apples. So that is that late arriving data. Now, the database cache, the nice thing about it is it's smart enough to know if the data changed in my underlying table, that cache is no longer valid. It's got to be refreshed. So the database cache has the correct version of the data now, where the Tableau cache doesn't. And where we see this, the effect of this, for instance, I created, and give me just a second here. So I've got a process running right now that is basically randomly putting dots in DC, Maryland, and Virginia around every 10 seconds. It replaces around 25% of the dots here with new ones. So this is pretty old. Now, if I use this refresh button, which basically tells Tableau, ignore your cache, go directly to the data again, I get new data. Now, if I just refresh the page though, now I've noticed definitely more than 10 seconds have transpired. And this will be a little bit quicker when it comes again. But if we notice, my dots really aren't moving. And I apologize if this is slow enough that you typically see this in much more real time, but dots aren't moving. Now, when I hit this refresh button, which forces that, now I'm going to see that my dots have moved. Same thing here. If I go again in around 10 to 15 seconds, I've got more dots that have moved. But again, when I do a refresh, because this reload actually goes against Tableau's cache, if possible, I've got no change again. So that is something to be aware of when using live connections on quickly changing data, is that by default, Tableau's cache is going to, it's going to try to use this cache wherever possible. Now, how do we mitigate that? There are a couple ways we can do that. Either we can just turn off caching. These are unfortunately those server-wide modifications, so you can't do it selectively to a project or to a workbook or even to a site. This is a server setting, and there's a TSM command you can do. You would set this to 0 or the word always if effectively at that point it's telling it to query the database every single time. Another thing you can do is to reduce the number of cache server processes to 0. The nice thing, granted, if you do that, is that then you can really reallocate those processes to things like your Viz engine or your data server or things like that that may make everything else faster, just in general, especially given how expensive it is to just run a server. For instance, we're on an AWS virtual machine ourselves, as we're entirely cloud-based, but that even at the lowest levels of Tableau's recommendation, that's $10,000 a year for that server. So running Tableau servers is definitely not a cheap thing. So if you can get more bang out of the buck you've already put in, absolutely do that. Another option is a URL parameter. So if you add this :refresh equals yes to the end of your URL, effectively that tells Tableau, don't use the cache, refresh the data here. That's typically only useful if you're embedding. You don't want to have to make your user click in :refresh equals yes. At that point, just use the refresh button. And that's probably, as far as a from a technical standpoint, this is definitely the easiest thing to do. However, it's requiring user training, and it's one of those things that users can rightfully so get a little grumpy about. You also have the availability to auto-refresh dashboards. So there are a couple methods you can do that with. Either an iframe embedding, so you'll just do the HTTP meta refresh thing that has been around for decades. You would use that with the refresh equals yes parameter. And then to the point of our speakers earlier, you can also use the JavaScript API to force that refresh as well if you need that up-to-date data. And here's a quick link to the Tableau article on doing effectively an auto-refreshing dashboard if you're interested. So with that, I know we covered a lot of stuff in a little amount of time. So if you have any questions, comments, let me know. I'll tell you what, before I do that, I'll show you here just to show you what a direct connection can do. Of course, we've got our refresh thing here. Okay, so we'll go February here. So this is a real dashboard we have. This is going against about a 200 million row fact table on a database instance. This runs about $8 an hour, if I remember correctly. So not tons and tons of spend. And granted, if we're not using it, we're not paying for it. So it's one of the things that's nice and powerful and available now in modern data platforms. So for instance, these are access patterns in February. If I turn to March, we can get a pretty quick update here. Of course, now the database is going to make me look like an idiot and not do so. There we go. So March here, obviously you can tell the impact of COVID on kids accessing our curriculum. It's pretty telling right there. And then, even the point where I'm doing a tooltip that calculates something day by day. real time. It's not incredibly snappy fast, but it's fast enough. So that's effectively real-time data against about 200 million rows, just right there. So with that now, any questions or comments?
Britton, I didn't see any questions in the Q&A, so I'll just give everyone a couple more seconds to submit in case they have one.
One just came through on the chat.
Okay.
It says, is there a way to trigger a refresh on dashboard when we have new data coming to the database?
So, I mean, there are API JavaScript calls you can do to force that refresh.
Yeah, I would like to chime in there.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Good segue to the next topic.
Oh, okay. Great segue to the next topic then. Okay.
One other question. What's the impact on server performance by making cache 0?
Well, I mean, so Tableau is recommended. So I can tell you that we run our server on AWS. And let me, and so at effectively minimum configuration that they recommend, we get, I think 16 effectively processes to allocate to the server. Right now, effectively 2 of those are allocated to cache. If you take out those 2 that are allocated to cache and then say allocate, say 1 to the Viz server and 1 to either the gateway or to or the data server, it will make access to the data from a rendering standpoint a good bit faster, especially if you're running 3 or 4 people at a time, because you've just effectively increased, for instance, your VizQL bandwidth by 50%.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you in response to the answer.
Yep.
Any other questions coming in? I don't see anything in QA still, so it seems like they're coming in chat. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, Britton, so much for your time and your presentation. We'll go ahead and transfer over presenter to Viraj, and I'll just do another quick intro. So Viraj is representing the Baltimore user group. So our user group, again, I'm the co-leader with Prim. We try to meet about quarterly at least. This year we got a little bit of a slow start with the pandemic. That's our goal. Our goal and our restrictions as to why we can't do more meetings is mostly based on typically meeting space and having to source speakers. So if we have, at this point, we don't have the limitation of space. So if we have enough speakers that are volunteering, we can have more frequent of meetings. So that's where that is. I'm just submitting now my email to the webinar chat window. So if you would like to speak, please reach out and we'd be happy to, whether you have a topic or not, if you don't have a topic, we're happy to help steer you in the direction of topics people have requested in the past as well. So that would be great. Prim, anything else that we should cover for the Baltimore user group?
No, I think we're good. I'm posting my email ID as well. Feel free to contact us, and we would like to do a lot more. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Sure. So our last topic for today will be APIs and use cases, one of which I believe ties perfectly to Britton's last question. So without delay, I'll go ahead and pass it along so we can get started.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you.
Just let me share my screen. Just let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see it now.
All right. A very good evening to everyone. I would like to thank everyone again for joining us today for this virtual meet. So I'm going to talk on the topic of Tableau APIs and the use cases. I'll begin with introducing myself. Yep. So I'm Viraj Deshpande. Just like you all, I love all things data. As far as my hobbies are concerned, I love being outdoors. And while I'm indoors, I love binging on Netflix shows and anime. And a word I learned from my anime binges was ikigai, and which is Japanese word for reason for being. And I like to define it in this way, that my ikigai is to learn to create and create to learn. Further below on the slide, you can see my journey. I moved to the USA in August of 2018. And a quick segue into June of 2020, I'm at this TUG meeting. And this is my first TUG event, actually. So I'm really excited to be here and speak on this wonderful platform. As regards my escapade with Tableau, the first time I got introduced to Tableau was in December 2018, which was through a workshop by one of our UMD alums, Mr. Harpreet Ghuman, who is also really active in the Tableau community as well. Soon after that, I started my own blog. It's called datawizardry.org, where I love documenting all my escapades with data. And this is really for myself to do justice to my ikigai, like I mentioned before. In December of 2019, I graduated from UMD with a major in information systems. And soon after that, I started working at Blend 360 with Prem and Sherry. Let's jump into the topic that I'm going to talk about today, which is Tableau APIs. A 10,000 feet overview. I'm going to mainly cover 4 APIs here. That's REST, webhooks, extract, and hyper. And the first question that everybody has usually is, why Tableau APIs? Like, Tableau has such a beautiful interface. Why would anyone want to complicate it by using something like an API? So the reasons are simple. An API lets you programmatically control the Tableau server components or resources. It helps you get a more granular control over the user's interaction, be it with respect to refreshes, publishes, assigning user roles, and so on. And a really good byproduct of this functionality is automation of tasks, like mentioned here. And you can package all these APIs together to create your own custom apps, which is really good. And we see many use cases around in the enterprise level applications of Tableau APIs. So in my presentation today, I'm going to leverage Python libraries that are built upon these Tableau APIs. To be specific, I'll be using the libraries highlighted in the parentheses here. First one being the Tableau Server Client, Tableau Hyper API, PanTab. Pandas, like everybody knows, which is a really good data handling library for Python. We also have something known as Tableau API lib. And I'll also leverage something known as SMTP lib to deliver reports to my end users. And what we're trying to achieve with this entire emulation is to have a complete data prep, querying, updating, and publishing solution for our clients. So jumping into my first workflow, this workflow summarizes what we're trying to achieve here by leveraging the APIs and all the libraries mentioned here. At the very core of this workflow is the first library mentioned here, which is the Tableau Server Client. What we're going to do is we're going to sign into Tableau Online using the TSC library. And from there, we'll take 2 parallel paths. One, which will help us discover all the elements that we have hidden inside our Tableau Online instance. That includes all the projects, the workbooks, the views, and so on. And on the other path, what we're going to do is just try to emulate a data prep example, where we'll try to locate a CSV file within our system. We'll try to read the contents of the CSV file within our Python environment. We'll leverage pandas to do that. And from there, what I wish to do is to emulate data wrangling or a data prep job by trying to split these, the source data frame into different components and then publishing them as hyper files. And where these 2 parts come together, is where we use the details that we find by querying our online instance. And we use those details to publish our hyperfiles to our Tableau online website. And from there, we segue into a more business related use case where we really filter the views that we have in our reports that we have saved on Tableau online. We filter them and then we send it out to our end users. Now, from the outside, the subscription facility is really native to Tableau Online. However, one limitation to this is that this subscription service is really available for all the users that are a part of a group or are a part of the Tableau Online instance. When it comes to distributing these reports or PDF formats of these reports for someone who is not a part of the organization or someone from a different department, for example, Tableau Online does not have that functionality built into it. And through this workflow, we'll try to achieve that. Next is this workflow. And what's fundamental to this workflow is the Tableau Hyper API that we're going to leverage. Again, here, it'll be a scaled down version of what we're really trying to do at enterprise levels, where we'll try to create hyperfiles. We'll try to query them using a SQL-like language. And then we'll try to append data to it. We'll try to update the data. And finally, we'll publish it to Tableau Online. And what the third workflow really shows you is the lengthiness that we'll, and the extra effort that you'll have to go through if you didn't have this API path that is shown in workflow number 2. I know just looking at these workflows could get really boring. So what I have planned next is a real demo where we'll dive into the Python code that I wrote to emulate all these workflows. So let's get into it. So this is something that I did in a Jupyter notebook, and a final product of this could be just written in Python, packaged as a batch file, which could be triggered using Windows Task Scheduler. This is all that's related to automation. That's something I'll touch upon in my closing notes. So let's get into the Python code here. So to begin with, what I've done is I have saved all my passwords, all my usernames as environment variables, which I'm trying to import in the first step here. Next, I'm just importing all the libraries that'll help me achieve the functionality I need in this workflow, which includes all the libraries that were built on the Tableau APIs. These libraries are both community supported and something that you can all access. All these libraries have some really good documentation on GitHub online. So as a student of data, I just use those resources to create this entire code. So this is where I'm importing it. I'm storing all my username, password, site ID, and et cetera, in these variables. From there, this is a place that I'm really using the Tableau server client to sign into my Tableau online. We're through. Now, what I'm doing is, to begin just for this demo purpose, I created a file that we all might relate to, which is a small emulation of the Superstore dataset. I have year, I have region, and I have sales numbers, which I've stored in a file called samples sales.csv. So I'm just importing this file into a data frame that's df. And let's look how this data looks. So since this data is really small, I'm not going to use head here. Let's see the entire length of the data. So this is my data. I have years that go from 2001 to 2011, regions that span over north, south, east, and west, and the sales numbers to go with these regions. From there, this is the data manipulation or data prep job that Pandas really helps you get done in a very simple way. This is an example for that. Here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in showing different examples how you could prep this data, because this is a really rudimentary data set. So we're just going to split our data frame into different regions. That's north, south, east, and west. And that's what we're doing here. Next, I'm going to use something that's called PandaLeo. This is a wrapper within Python that helps you change your CSV files into hyper files, which can be later used to create Tableau reports. So that's what I'm doing here. Next, what we're going to do is we'll write these hyper files onto a certain file that's saved within on our system. We'll have the full data. We'll have data for north, south, east, and west what we created here. So let's do that. These are not errors. These are just prompts that tell you that this extract does not exist. And these lines of code have successfully created these hyperfiles in the given location on my system. So that being done, we'll move on to the parallel path I talked about, wherein we'll try to explore all the moving pieces and all the reports and projects that we have saved on our Tableau Online. Here, I'm using the Tableau developer website that comes free with the developer program. So there are not many things I've saved in there. So I have a project called demo. So how this entire operation works is, if you want to present, if you want to point to a certain project or a workbook, you essentially use this project ID here. And that's what we're trying to extract. So here our project of interest is demo. And we want to find out what relevant project ID is assigned for demo. And this is what we get, which is saved in the variable project ID. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to publish two of our hyperfiles that we just created above. One will be the full data, and the other will be best data. So we are publishing this. And the way I have created this print statement is that it gives us a prompt once it's successfully published, and it also gives out the data source ID, which we can later leverage in the consequent steps in our code. From there, we're just going to check Tableau Online for all the available data sources. And this is what we're doing there. So we have three. One is full data, West data that we just published above. From there, our workbook of interest within the project demo is new sales. And what we're going to do is we just want to know the workbook ID for this workbook. And this is what it gives us. Next, we'll try to obtain all the views that this workbook has packed within it so that we can perform the filtering operation that we wanted to do, like I described in my workflow previously in the presentation. So let's do this. Now we see here that our project is demo, our workbook is new sales, and it has three aspects to it. Two of them which are sheets, which is sales performance and year-over-year change. And then the third one, which is a dashboard, which is called report. Alternatively, if you just want to query the entire expanse of your Tableau Online instance for all the views and for all the workbooks and for all the projects that's saved within that, this is what you can run, and it will give you an output. Looks messy, but can be easily formatted to be visually intuitive like this. Next, this is just a digression towards another topic, which is doing all these operations using tab CMD, which can be done using the command prompt. And I've just added a sample code here that you can use to run that batch file, which has all the tab CMD code within it. And that operation can be done from within Python as follows. But we're not doing that since we are doing all of it in Python itself. At this point, let's look at our progress so far. We have signed into the Tableau Online using TSC. We could locate our CSV file. We read the contents. We did create all the hyper files that we wanted, and they're ready over here. Later, we went in, we found the project that we wanted. We narrowed down on the workbook. We found all the views that exist within our project. And then we combined both these paths to publish our hyperfiles online. From here, what we really want to do is to filter these views down by, say, regions, and then we want to mail it to our end users. So here, what I'm going to do is adding filters to our dashboard that's called report. Like we saw above, the dashboard of interest is report, and I want to filter region down to include only West and North. So let's do that. And then what we're going to do is we will extract this entire filtered view as a PDF, which can later be shared over an email. So this is done. And next, just for a corollary, we'll try to filter down to the regions East and South. Let's do that here. East and South is done, and we're going to download a PDF. Now, the way that I really want to distribute this is to people that are not a part of the community or aren't users on our Tableau online instance. So for this purpose, I'm using a library called SMTP-lib that sends an email over a certain SMTP server onto our end users. So here I'm using my personal email ID to as the sender, and the recipient is going to be my official Blend 360 email ID. In the first chunk of block, I'm going to send out a report for the west and north zone. And in the second one, it's going to be east and south zone. So let's see how this works. This is done, and this is done. And after that's done, I'm going to terminate my session because I'm done with the operation I want. And hopefully soon enough, we should have a notification. Yep. So this is the email that I received. It's from Viraj.Maryland. That's my personal ID. This is for the east and south zone. And previously it's something that came from the west and north zone, and the PDF looks something like this. So yeah, so this is for the north and west zone. And similarly, if you want to see a report for south and east, this is the north and west, this is south and east. So we're going to open this. Let's get this out of the way. And yeah, this is east and south. So we have both the reports here. And this is the operation we really wanted to achieve using TSC, and it's done. Moving on to some other interesting functionalities. Now here, I'm just going to talk about small examples wherein I try to demonstrate what Hyper API could do for end users. So how I try to explain this is this API will let us define a schema and a table in addition to giving us a SQL-like querying capability. Why use Hyper is something I found within this blog post. It's a really good blog post highlighting all the advantages of using .hyper files. And I'll post this link later in the chat that you can view to see all the advantages of using this Hyper file format. Coming down to the workflow that I described previously in my presentation, this is what we're doing using this Hyper API. And as opposed to this, this is what we would have to do if we didn't use this pathway of operation. And this is something that we'll really understand what I really mean by that, by the operation I'm trying to do here. Now here, I'm using the Tableau Hyper API to define a table. Again, a same table that we used previously with 3 columns. One is year, region, and sales. And just like SQL, we are going to try to inject these these rows into the table that we're defining here. So let's do that. Then we'll try to query this table just like a pandas data frame. And this is how the table looks. It's exactly how we defined it here. It's 2001, 2002, north, and 1134, 1334. That looks perfect. From there, imagine a scenario where you want to append a line of data into this table that you just created. If you didn't use this chunk of code, you would have to go back to the CSV file, add that data through whatever sources you got it from, and then save it again. But here, we don't have to go through the entire long operation of doing that. Instead, we just run this line of code. And then we again look for the data frame. And yep, it's in there. Another line of data that's for the West region, year 2003, with the sales figure of 1331, perfectly reflected in here. From there, imagine that you're using a really large data frame. Here, we're just using 3 rows with 3 columns, but imagine you're using about 1 million rows. And you want to, you realize that some sales numbers for region West for the year 2003 were misreported, and you want to bump them up by multiplying them by a factor of 1.5. So instead of again going through the entire operation of finding that CSV file, adding, updating data in there and saving it again, and then creating a Tableau extract for that file, we don't have to do all that in here. And like I mentioned, we use SQL-like language to find the table, that's FOO. We find the column, that's sales, and we want it to be multiplied by a factor of 1.5. But this operation should only affect the row number 2 for the region West. So once we do that, and again, when we query that data, and this is the difference. For the year 2003, region West, the sales figures were 1331, but now we have them bumped up to 1997. And now that we have our data frame ready, again, let's go back to the basics using TSC, publishing it online, and it's done. And this is the ID. So that's the demonstration part of it. And just for perspective, I'll walk you through the Tableau online instance I have. This is the report that we were using. We published 3 data sources here, one which was full data, followed by West data, and then in the final Hyper API example, we published the Hyper data sample here. Another interesting aspect that it's really difficult to demonstrate in here, but because of the time lag, but the demonstration I wanted to give was for webhooks. Now you see a bunch of operations I did here. I published data sources, I downloaded PDFs. So what I did was I used webhooks along with Postman and IFTTT. I combined these services so that it triggers an email notification. So this is, I ran the script again in the morning today, and it can send you an email like this. And referring to Britain's example previously, Tableau admins really should be on top of their Tableau online or Tableau servers. They should know what exactly is going on, when the data is being refreshed, when a new data source is being published. So this is a really simple example of how this can be done. I have used a free service that's IFTTT, but the same operation can be done by using an application called Zapier in tandem with Postman and the webhooks API that's found within the Tableau resources. Let's go back to our presentation. So having this demo done, so the workflow was really born out of an in-progress project for an energy company that Blend 360 is working with. They really want to automate their BI pipeline, for which we are gathering resources, we are doing proof of concepts, and it's an ongoing project. And the example that I showed you today is a really scaled down version of what we are trying to achieve there. So in that project, what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect to a live data source that could be in a cloud storage such as Snowflake. And whenever a new data is added in there, we really want to trigger a refresh for the workbook. And once that's done, the report has to be emailed out to sales reps that operate Pan America. The only small caveat there is that only the relevant data should be reflected in reports for the given salesman. So for example, if a salesman works in the North region, all the data pertaining to the North region only should be condensed into a report and should be mailed out. Hence the entire emulation I just showed you here. So this is some interesting work we are doing over at Blend 360. For example, this solution is something that we are building at the intersection of a bunch of ETL tools, BI tools like Alteryx and Tableau. So if you guys have any data related projects, or if you want assistance on anything that's related to data, be data science, BI, data integration, data architecture, Blend 360 could really help you. And you could reach out to us on this link that's mentioned right here. And before I yield my time for questions, I would love to get in touch with all of you here. I love collaborating on weekend projects with people. I'm a relatively new user to the Tableau environment. I'm learning every week. So I try to come up with different projects to explore my data skills on a weekly basis. So it would be great if we could catch up and collaborate. And these are all the links that you can reach out to me on. And that's my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Viraj. Thank you so much. I'm just checking here to see if we have any follow-up questions. The only one I see so far is that our users have asked if you could post a link to your blog in the chat once you're done.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you. And I think that wraps up our meeting. Thank you to everyone again for attending. Prem and I both put our email in the chat, so you can reach out to us there. You can reach out to everyone every way. I also put all of the user group community pages in there where you can find user group leaders, additional content, resources, etc. Does anyone else from our panel have anything to add before we jump off the call?
I just wanted to say real quick, thanks to everybody. And if anybody online is interested in doing any presentations for the Nova group in the future, or probably for any of the groups, I'm sure, please reach out to any of us and let us know. But thank you to everybody who presented and everybody who attended. It was fantastic.
Definitely.
It was a great show. Yeah. And Brittany, thank you for pulling this together. I know it's 3 different groups and the way we meet is very different, but I'm very glad we were able to pull this together and first virtual regional user group meeting.
Yeah. I think it was great. It was a good, unique situation to do this, for sure.
I didn't want to jinx us, but we had no technical difficulties pretty much. And I think that's amazing considering we have 10 different panelists.
Yeah.
I'll pat us all on the back for that one.
I had a minor one. I mistyped my name. So it's SE normally.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining.
All right. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. See
Thank
you next
All right.
time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.